Hey guys, Scott here with Adventure Further, and today I wanted to go over our tow rig. This is our 2020 F450 cab chassis, and what that means is this came from the factory with just a straight bed, and with this one we chose a 11-foot flatbed, and we converted it. Instead of having the stock dual tires on it, one is ride quality, two, it doesn't look good, and so we wanted to switch it over to these super singles. And what these are 42-inch Goodyear military tires. And this is one thing that I've been wanting to do for many years. I seen it years ago, a couple guys did it, and after I seen it I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get an F450 and that we're gonna take across the country, and I want to do this conversion. Not only is the ride quality that much better just because you have that much more rubber, but with being a military tire, I don't lose any GVW. And what that is gross vehicle weight towing. I could still use the full potential of the truck. Most of the time when you go to a tire of this size and a single rear wheel, you won't be able to have the payload of the truck anymore. Instead of having like a 5,000 pound payload, you might drop down to 1,000 or 1,500 pound payload. But these tires are Goodyear G275s, and we're actually able to have a 6,700 pound payload per tire. So what that means is it actually, these tires over exceed what I can handle with this truck. So no problems with that. We've already got upwards of 8,000 miles probably on these tires, and they still look like new, but we've already traveled across the country once with it and back, and wear and tear on these tires have been really good. The only thing that we came across with towing is we're not sure. We actually swapped out the rear gear ratio, and I'm trying to figure out if the 617 gear ratio is a good gear ratio for this size of a tire, or because we are towing two Jeeps, as you'll see in the video here, we're towing two Jeeps across the country with an off-road trailer, sometimes even three Jeeps on the trailer, as you'll see some of the video footage of that. It almost seems like with a 42-inch tire, it might be just a little bit too much. So if we're gonna be towing that large of a load, we actually are gonna be trying out a super single from DDC Wheels. Super excited to get those wheels. We're gonna go from a 42 for towing down to a 37-inch by 12.5-inch dually rear wheel. So these will be our everyday driver. Eventually we're gonna go out west with this. Our game plan for down the road, not right now, but we're talking about doing like a Lance truck camper. We really like those 1172 truck campers. They are huge and give you a lot of space, and it's kind of like the whole van life thing. I don't know if I could see myself in a van ever in my life. So from that aspect, we are actually thinking of keeping these 42s will be our off-road tires, going out in the middle of the wilderness off-grid, and potentially using this truck down the road. So that's kind of what our game plan is, but we're still trying to feel out exactly what we want. I love the truck. I don't want to get rid of the truck at all, and don't plan on it. So we're gonna keep doing some modifications to fit our needs. I'll start today by going over some of the stuff that I've already done to the truck, and we'll start right here with these fiberglass fenders. With having these 42-inch tires, which are like 13.5, but when they're ballooned out, it's like 15.5-inch tires, plus with the offset of the super singles, this tire tracks exactly the same as the rear tire. So what that is also saying is that when you take the dually wheels off, instead of having the staggered pattern of a tire offset, it actually is in line with each other. And from there, with it being in line with each other, tracking down a trail out west, that's why super singles on big trucks like this are so much better than having a dually tire. Not only for going down a trail out west, you have a dually tire, also can have rocks that get stuck in between them, and you have a blowout going down a trail. So that's why the super singles are such a great option for it, especially if you have a really large payload. But these are the McNeil fenders that cover up. I did the 6-inch plus fender, so it covers, instead of the stock fender being all the way back here, it's extended out, almost covers the edge of the tire here, which it makes it look really nice and appealing. It's almost as wide as the actual bed of the truck. So that's one thing we did with the McNeil fenders. And then these wheels are custom wheels, aluminum wheels that are actually machined. These are actually Staswork wheels, and they're made locally here in Wisconsin. We met up with the guy, talked to him quite a bit. John over there is absolutely wonderful to deal with. They'll powder coat them in pretty much any color you want. This is actually a 20 by 12 aluminum wheel, and it's reversible. So the nice thing about these is you can actually rotate your super singles. This wheel, you can actually put it on the very back tire and swap them front to back. And if you have a blowout, we do carry a spare with us. That spare can also go on front or back, which is really nice. This is a shallow side, which is like somewhere around a 2.5-inch offset, and the back I think is somewhere around a 9-inch offset, I believe, from front to back. So it's a deep dish in the rear and a shallow one up front. Moving on to the front more. So coming around to the front here, we actually have a Expedition 1 bumper, which I have to say I'm totally in love with. This thing is beefy. It is solid steel. I mean, not 100% solid, but it's like 1/4-inch steel, 3/16, very, very sturdy bumper. And the design of it I love. And what I loved about it is that they actually made this bumper. They have two versions of it, one for a standard F450 with stock fenders, and then they also have it for the McNeil fenders. So if you see it on both sides, it lines up right with the edges of this McNeil fenders, and I love that they did it. I don't think there's anyone else in the country that is manufacturing a bumper for the McNeil fenders. So if I didn't have that, the standard bumper would come all the way into here and it would just look goofy. So I love this bumper with the coverage and everything that it offers. It has the toe points right here in the front, a 3/4-inch D-ring front and or top and bottom. Along with that, we have a 16.5 worn winch, and with synthetic line, and then that thing is a beast of a winch, and so we are good there for long-term use. If we ever are off-road or even in any sort of recovery position, we have our own winch to get out, and it will at least be able to handle the truck. And then one of the greatest things we have are these Baja design lights. I can't say how much I love these things enough too. These things are so bright, it blows your mind. We run LP6s and LP4s on our Jeeps, but with having these LP9s, it's like daylight driving down the road. And whether we're on a gravel road or if in the middle of the night, we do a lot of night driving, and with that, I'll even throw on the ambers driving down the highway in the middle of the night just to light it up so we can really see. And we have 2 spots and then we have 2 combos, and these lights are super bright. With that, we also have the Baja Designs XLs, and these XLs are fog lights, which for fog lights, they're probably also too bright, but we actually run them as fogs, and they are really, really great lights as well. So between that, light coverage is perfect. We have no problem seeing on, off-road, or anything like that. Then I actually swapped out the front halogen lights. These were originally the stock halogen factory lights that were like candlesticks. I think you could put a candle in front of the truck and it was brighter. So these are Mishimoto's dual HID headlights, and these are actually, I'll show you here, the turn signals are actually incorporated into the headlights and everything too, and they are awesome for just daily driving. You can actually see when you're driving compared to the candlesticks that used to be installed on this thing. So we went from a factory cab chassis, which they do come with a bunch of options, but the options that they come with just weren't enough for us. So we did a little bit of upgrades there for us to be happy with all the traveling we're doing across country. So we'll go around to the other side. We actually did a custom wrap for us. The white just wasn't enough for me. It was too plain Jane. And so I wanted to get some sort of mural into here. We are going to Alaska, and with going to Alaska, wanted to kind of incorporate something with that, because this is going to be our tow rig to get all the way up there, 2 Jeeps in the trailer. And so I think he really knocked it out of the park for us, this wrap, with having our logo down here and having our channel and everything over here. That really turned out great. We actually swapped out the steps. The stock steps that came with this thing were just not great. And I actually have a Ford Raptor. So when I swapped out my steps on my Ford Raptor, I took those off and threw them immediately on here. The cabs actually are the same all the way from a Ford Raptor F450 all the way up to the F450s. And so I was actually to snatch these up, and they're direct bolt-ons. And I thought that was a really good touch with that. Coming around to the back a little bit further, the flatbed came standard just as a flatbed. We wanted to have extra cargo space. The cargo space for this actually was virtually nothing, and I wanted to make sure, with all the straps and all the extra tools and extra parts that we're going to be carrying, to have enough space for it. So we did a 48-inch box here, steel box, that we mounted right to the frame, and then we actually got a box for the rear of the truck and wanted to get this, and we got this incorporated with our logo. And this is like a 5-foot rigid box is what we actually got for this. And I tell you what, this has definitely been really nice, and it's full. Like, we actually put our extra power tanks in this thing. And Carnage welder. You never know when you need a welder, whether you're on the trail or down the highway. At some point, that's a battery operated welder. So that kind of hangs out in here, and we're actually to take that with us. One of the other really cool things, that we swapped out this whole suspension on this thing. I went from a stock suspension of an F450, and we upgraded it to a Carlini 2.5-inch lift suspension with King shocks and resis on this. So it's not your standard F450, and the shocks on this thing are massive. They're 2.5-inch shocks, and the ride quality for an F450, if anybody's wondering, is not really great from stock, from factory. And so we wanted to upgrade that just a little bit. So these are Celastic shackles. This is something that is used for F450s going down the road, and it being really rough. These take a lot of that bouncing and constant jolting out of it and helps improve suspension, which I may have went a little excessive on that for an F450, but I tell you what, that made a big difference, and I'm very happy with it. The amount of time that we're going to spend in this thing, I wanted to make sure it was good. So having that King shock in there, front and rear, that are actually tuned for the vehicle. So they actually tuned them prior to me even getting it. They have a kit that we purchased, and we installed it at our shop, and went on perfectly. No complications. Swapped out front coil springs, and then swapped in the reservoir shocks. So that was a really great upgrade. And then on top of that, we also did the rear exhaust. The exhaust we actually had was also the factory exhaust. We swapped that out and did a 4-inch back exhaust with a 5-inch outlet. So it gives a nice little tone as we're running down the highway, but it's still super quiet for just driving hours on end, and then you don't have the droning noise. So we wanted to make sure to exit the pipe past the flatbed so we didn't hear an echo inside the cab. So that was another great thing. We also worked with Titan tanks. Titan Tanks has a kit for the cab chassis, which the cab chassis comes with a standard 45-gallon tank behind the rear axle. And so at the time I was like, well, 45 gallons isn't enough if you're only getting 7 miles a gallon towing 30,000 pounds. That wasn't going to get us very far. And with going all the way to Alaska, we wanted to make sure to have plenty of fuel to make through from stop to stop. And so Titan Tanks has a tank that we installed into this, which is a 54 or 55 gallon auxiliary tank that actually goes where a similar factory tank would go. With the Titan tanks, you can actually use the factory fill spout, and it taps into that, and then just slowly as you're driving down the highway has a separate pump that just transfers the fuel from that tank into the factory tank, so you know how much fuel you have at all times. Came with a little gauge that you'll see which tells you how full it is and how empty it is. And then it also times out where I think it stays on for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes and then turns back, just automatically turns off so that you don't run the pump dry. But that is another really nice thing for them long trips where you just don't want to stop after 300 miles. We have a 45-foot deck gooseneck, which comes out to a 53-footer. And this flatbed, we have a gooseneck ball in here. And so this thing is towing a 53-foot gooseneck with the 2 Jeeps and the trailer. And like we've already went to Hot Springs or Arkansas with it and towed 3 Jeeps on it. And that was a really great trailer for us. It's a triple axle dually. So we have a 30K trailer and we're running right around 26,000 pounds on that rig. So one of the greatest things about having all of our gear with us is that we're able to have any parts or, I mean, I've even brought extra Jeeps to places to make sure if I break down that we're not out an entire weekend. So that's another really nice thing there to have that large of a gooseneck, just for you never know when you're going to need something. So it works out really great. But hope you guys like the F450. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments and I'll try to answer them the best I can. But this is our full setup and we love it.